Hi, Amol. Can you hear me? Hello. Am I audible? Hi, everyone. Am I audible? I think we'll wait for another 2 minutes. Let's see if more are joining and then we can start. Just want to check if you can hear me. Or can anyone respond in the chat or something? Because I have to just make sure this gets recorded.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thanks. Okay, so I hope all of you have uh, gone through this week's lectures. Another 1 week to go, and then we'll have our uh, revision week. So, almost nearing the end of the NPTEL Wildlife Ecology course. I hope all of you have enjoyed it so far and uh, had a good learning experience. I think I'm going to start in another minute or so if there's no one coming in. Just wait for another minute. All right, so I think we'll start. So let me put up the first question. So what are LIDs? Are they low impact disturbances? Are they large impact disturbances? Are they large and infrequent disturbances? Or are they large illegal disturbances? You can use the chat box to put in your choices. So you've already come across this earlier in your in the classes, but it's under a different heading. It's coming here, disturbances that can affect the ecosystem. So what are these LIDs? No one? Okay, take a guess. Three people are here. No guesses? Okay, we have one more joining in. No guesses? No. What if you had to pick a choice? You have to pick something. Sorry, Devesh, I can't hear you clearly. Yeah, Devesh.
Sorry, ma'am, I
Yeah, yeah, no problem.
joined.
Yeah, now I can hear you clearly. Yeah, do you want to guess what could be the possible answer for this question? Come on, take a guess. Why is no one guessing? Okay, Rashidul has at least guessed. Large impact disturbances. Okay. Okay, Devesh says C. What about Amol and Jyotsna? It's just having two answers. C. Okay, Jyotsna says C. What about the others? Okay, so the correct answer is yes, indeed, C. Could you give me some examples of a large and infrequent disturbances? Or a large and infrequent, yeah, you could give me multiple. What would you categorize?
Fire.
Fire, yes, sure, fire, forest fire.
Yes, ma'am. Viral infection, maybe.
What, Devesh?
Viral disease.
Viral disease. Uh, yeah, that's an interesting answer. Sure, yes, but viral diseases are quite common, right? So I don't know if you can quantify them as like large and infrequent in terms of magnitude because, yeah, they spread very rapidly as well. But, but yeah, any other example? Like it can be anything, right? It could be like any calamity, any natural disaster. Could be a tsunami, it could be a flood. Yeah, David.
Sure, ma'am.
Yeah, it could be like a volcanic eruption, right? So when you have these large and infrequent disturbances, they affect the ecosystem in various different ways, right? First of all, yes, correct, a catastrophe. First of all, they wipe out all the biodiversity that's present in an area, right? And then, okay, let's just go to the next question and then take a discussion on this. Uh, oops, why is it not showing? Okay, so the next question is what hypothesis is represented by the graph given alongside?
Ma'am, it's intermediate hypothesis.
Right. Yeah, that's a good answer. So this is the intermediate disturbance hypothesis, and would you like to explain this? Or any, it's open to anyone.
Ma'am,
Yeah,
it
Devesh.
say that intermediate disturbance diversity.
Intermediate disturbance increases diversity. right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
ma'am.
So as Devesh has explained, there are different levels of disturbances. This is actually from one of your earlier lectures, right? I think this was there in one of, I can't remember the lecture module, but this was there. So basically, you have three levels of disturbances. One is low, one is intermediate, and one is high. And then you have species diversity on your y-axis out here. So as you can see, the species diversity increases till a point and then it rapidly drops. Now, would anyone like to explain why is that happening? So to set the stage, I just told you earlier that when there is a catastrophe, all the biodiversity in an area is wiped out, right? And then what happens? Go back to your previous, try and recollect your previous lectures. When a catastrophe happens in a place, after that, biodiversity is wiped out, and then what starts happening? It gets forced for evolution. Okay, but okay, sure. So, what happens in that landscape? Let's take, for example, a forest fire. A forest fire has somehow started and it's wiped out the entire uh, biodiversity. Yeah, diversity increases in terms of you start seeing, yes, new species. You start seeing regeneration, right, of seeds that were in the ground that have now emerged and they are starting a new set of organisms in the area. And what is this called? Do you remember the term for this? Succession, yes, correct. So this is primary succession will happen like in a barren area, and you will have regeneration for a lot of organisms that uh, especially vegetation that had roots or seeds that were buried in the soil that were unaffected by the fire. And then you see that the species diversity rapidly increases, right, at an intermediate level of disturbance, and then it suddenly crashes when there is a high level of disturbance. So, why does that happen? So, let's say, like, you have a forest fire that has wiped out an entire like landscape, and then you have certain vegetation that was regenerating, and then you have suddenly very before the vegetation could establish itself, there has been another catastrophe in terms of, let's say, a flood, and all the organisms have died out. What will happen in this case? Will there be succession or there won't be succession? Uh, is this not clear? Like when you have multiple calamities that are happening back to back in a particular landscape, will the species diversity increase or not? Okay, Daniel says succession will occur, but there will be no increase in species diversity. Okay, so that is kind of contradictory, right? Okay, no. No. Okay, so no dinner, okay, no diversity, and no, okay, yeah, so
Ma'am,
basically,
I think it
yeah, they wish. I actually can't hear you now. Succession will occur, but diversity will not increase. How does that happen? How will succession, okay, diversity will not increase is established, but how will succession occur if the landscape is not given enough time to regenerate? So, succession is a slow process, right? It takes some amount of time for, okay, sure, small plants can occupy, but then it just gets stunted at the small plant stage, right? There won't be succession of plants. You won't have shrubs or you won't have trees because only small plants can survive in that particular area, right? So yes, you're correct. Species diversity will be low, and certain species will inhabit the area where they are able to survive, provided that they are given the appropriate time to regenerate and establish themselves in that landscape, right? uh, okay, so cool, let's move on to the next thing. uh, Name an accidental oil spill that occurred in the Gulf of Mexico. This is a really famous one. BP, I don't know if that rig did belong to BP, but it had another name. It's a very famous name, also a movie now. Uh, I don't know if it was a British petroleum. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it was a BP petrol oil spill. Yeah, so it is known as, yeah, the Deepwater Horizon. And does anyone know what had happened during this? What kind of an oil spill was this? Was it intentional or was it natural? The rig was blasted. Okay. Any other insights? Due to weak structure and ignored by. So, are you saying this was intentional? No. Okay. So, it was, what was it? Accidental. Yeah. So, this was an accidental oil spill that had happened, and a huge amount of oil was, uh, yeah, let go into the open ocean, and it caused a lot of damage, right? And so you know the incident. So this was just a discussion. Based. Okay. So what are the hydrocarbons that are derived from the incomplete burning of minerals? Are they called biogenic hydrocarbons? Are they pleogenic hydrocarbons? Are they pyrogenic hydrocarbons, or are they petrogenic hydrocarbons? D. Okay. D. Okay. Any other guesses? 2 for D, petrogenic hydrocarbons. Any other guesses? Okay, we are 1, 2. Okay, Devesh has changed to C. What about Amol, Rashidul, Jyotsna? What do you feel? No guesses? Okay, the name itself, if you break it down, should reveal a clue. No? C, okay. Yeah, so yes, the right answer is C, pyrogenic hydrocarbons. So, can someone tell me what are these different kinds of hydrocarbons? Yeah, it is C, it is pyrogenic hydrocarbons. So, could actually pleiogenic is just a random name, it does not exist. Can someone explain to me what are biogenic, pyrogenic, and petrogenic hydrocarbons? So these are classifications based on the sources of origination of these hydrocarbons, right? So if we take it down, yeah, biogenic is from derived from biological process that act on mineral oils. Then you have pyrogenic, pyro that means fire, and it basically is derived from the incomplete burning of mineral oils. And petrogenic hydrocarbons, petro means rock. So hydrocarbons are formed from the rocks, yeah, in its natural state, directly from they derive directly from mineral oils. They are known as petrogenic hydrocarbons, right? Okay, let's move to the next question. Oops. Okay, so hydrocarbons are divided into 5 groups based on their specific gravity. Now, tell me which group is susceptible to spread the most and cover the largest area, and also which group is likely to cause the most ecological damage and why. So, let's answer the first question first. Which group is susceptible to spread the most, which means that it covers the largest area? Is it group 1, group 2, 3, 4, 5? You can just say probably group whichever in your response. E, okay. David says group 5. Any other guesses? So, do all of you know what is specific gravity? Specific gravity is usually measured using water as a standard, right? So, and it depends on the density of a particular substance, right? So if you have a low specific gravity, it will be higher, and if you have a high specific gravity, it will be lower. So it will settle below water, right? So here you have 5 groups. of hydrocarbons that can be assigned on the basis of their specific gravity. Group 1 being the lightest and group 5 being the lowest. So, actually, the answer to which group is susceptible to spread the most is actually group 1, which is the lightest and is found floating on the surface of the water, right? And when it is found floating at the surface of the water, it has like the largest spread. It can spread, since it's much lighter, it can just spread to very large areas at the top. Yeah. So they don't really sink in the water. They remain on top and then they are exposed to all the general uh, forces of the weather and then they break down, right? So what happens to the ones that come to the surface? What do you think is the okay? So tell me which is what about the second part? Which group is likely to cause the most ecological damage and why? This is for part 2. Okay, group 4. Okay, so this is maybe a little not intuitive to understand. So basically, group 1 hydrocarbons are found on the surface of the water. They are able to spread very large areas, right? But the fact is that since they are able to spread over a large area, they also have the highest exposure to sunlight and are able to go through the process of oxidation and breakdown, right? So the cumulative effect on the ecology of an organism is much lesser since it is distributed over a large area. But whereas group 5, that has the highest specific gravity, is concentrated in a particular region and gets settled down at the bottom of the ocean, right? And since it is not dispersed across a large area, there is no dilution effect. Whatever are the bottom feeders of the ocean, such as like all the shellfish and all those kind of organisms, they are going to end up having a concentrated dose of toxicity, right? And it is likely to result in a higher ecological damage than that results from a group 1 hydrocarbon. Does this make sense? So higher the specific gravity, it sinks to the bottom of the ocean, remains concentrated, affects more animals in terms of causing ecological damage, whereas group 1 hydrocarbons are the lightest in nature. They rise up above and remain above the surface of the water. They have a huge spread, so they're able to cover a very large area, but this also enables it to get oxidized and broken down. Is this clear or understood? No, not clear. Clear. Should I move ahead? Some response. Okay. All right. Uh, Fine. So, a little bit of information on oil eating microbes. So, we have, so to combat these oil spills, there are several scientists and several researchers that are conducting studies in order to find out how to deal with oil spills in the most biologically friendly manner. And what they have found is that there are naturally occurring microbes that can help in the breakdown of these hydrocarbons in oil, right? So what happens is that so now these oil spills that occur in the ocean remain for several years altogether, right? Because it's a very slow process of breaking down. So what is shown out here is that the oil spill, the oil contains hydrocarbons that are made from various amounts of carbon and hydrogen, right? Hydrocarbons are nothing but just CH chains, right? Of different molecular weights. And you need oxygen to break it down, but this can be not very less, like not at all readily available at the deeper end of the ocean, right? Because anyway, solubility of oxygen decreases as acidity increases. So, with the global warming current scenario, the total amount of dissolved oxygen is also lesser. So, what happens when you add these microbes is that these microbes have some mechanism in them that breaks apart these hydrocarbons and allows them to combine with oxygen. Thus, when the hydrogen molecules combine with oxygen, they form water, and the carbon molecules combine with oxygen to form carbon dioxide. So these are in turn broken down. And to feed these microbes, since these microbes also need some nutrition to survive, they add fertilizers that cause the increase in the size and number of these microbes so that they can eat more oil, right? And sometimes, and obviously, like the microbe will not entirely break down all the oil. So a lot of the oil is still left over in the ocean, which is, of course, comparatively lesser than what it was before the microbes attacked them. And these are more easily dispersed by currents and winds over the entire ocean. Yeah. So another example, of a microbe is known as this alkanivorax that feeds on oil, and this particular bacteria has a natural emulsifier that helps to break up these oil droplets. So when these bacteria are put inside the ocean surface, they surround the oil droplet and form a kind of biofilm that helps in enclosing the oil droplets and then in turn breaking it down into smaller particles. So this was just an example. So apart from oil spills, plastic is also a major concern. So plastic is the most prevalent type of marine debris found in our oceans and Great Lakes, and plastic debris can come in all shapes and sizes. But there are also plastic debris that are less than 5 millimeters in length. And what are they called? Are they called styrofoams? Are they called microplastics? Are they nanoplastics or are they PET? You have to choose the most appropriate option out here. Any guesses? Okay. Amol says microplastics. What about the others? Any other guesses?
Ma'am, microplastics.
All right. So yes, they are microplastics, right? Okay, so let's move on to the next question. So, dash are relatively non volatile organic substances, mostly liquids. When they are incorporated into a plastic or elastomer, they help improve the polymer's flexibility, extensibility, and processability. Right? These substances increase the flow and thermoplasticity of a polymer by decreasing the viscosity of the polymer melt, the glass transition temperature, and the melting temperature, and the elastic modulus of the finished product without altering the fundamental character of the plasticized material. So, what are these substances called? Are they additives? Are they toxins? Are they plasticizers? Or are they emulsifiers? Okay, Anil says C. Yeah, Devesh, do you have an answer? Not able to hear you, Devesh. Okay. Any other guesses? What the substance could be? D. Okay. Amol says emulsifier. Any other guesses? C. Okay. Okay. Yes. So the right answer is C. So why are plasticizers not good for the environment? Does anyone know why are plasticizers harmful to the environment?
Ma'am, they are not biodegradable.
Okay, they are not biodegradable and it has another property. They are also really toxic to the environment, right? And these plasticizers kind of give firmness to any plastic structure, and they also are a good fire retardant. But what happens when they are discarded is that they actually are made up of a lot of toxic substances, and one of the most common uh, toxic plasticizer is, any idea? Any idea? This is there in your lecture notes. What is an example of a commonly found plasticizer? No idea? Okay, so one of the most commonly used plasticizers that are also toxic in nature is bisphenol A, and it is also known as an endocrine disruptor, which means that the molecular structure of bisphenol A is very similar to some of the hormones in our body, and this interferes in the functioning of our body. Or any other organism's body, matter of fact, and that's why it is toxic in nature. And there is an example of, I think, tadpoles that have been found that bisphenol phenol A affects it in terms of they the structure is very similar to the sex hormones. So that means that I think addition of bisphenol phosphate results in all the tadpoles being female, because the sex determination in amphibians happens at a later stage, and because of certain hormones, and bisphenol A results in all female tadpoles and in turn frogs. So then that is also a problem in the ecosystem when you have only females and no males, right? Okay, let's move on. This is a very cool thing that happens in animals, and what is this particular phenomenon called? Here you have a set of eggs that are found in the beach, and you have various temperatures out here and various sexes. Then you again have temperature out here on the x-axis and the percentage of males on the y-axis. So what is this phenomenon called? When temperature is a driving factor to relate to the number of males and females present in a population. Yeah, what is this phenomenon called? Any idea? No idea. So it has the acronym of TSD. Does anyone know? Yeah, the slide moved from plasticizer. Are you not seeing the next slide? Is anyone seeing the slide where I have a bunch of images on the screen? Yes, no? Okay, I have only Amol and Rhinal here. Yes, okay, cool. Yeah, so it has the acronym of, okay, Devesh, I think you might just want to leave and join again because I don't think it's refreshed. So this has the acronym of TSD. So what is TSD? TSD is basically known as temperature dependent sex determination, right? So what does this tell us? It's very obvious. But does anyone want to explain? Okay, there are just two of you.
Ma'am, it takes place in turtles.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yes, it does take place in turtles. It's a very common and popular example of temperature determined dependent sex determination. And what happens in turtles is that these are only observed in like reptiles and teleost fish actually, and it differs in terms of chromosomal sex determination, where you have like in the case of mammals you have XX and XY for females and male. In birds you have ZZ and ZW for males and females. But out here in reptiles, yeah, they wish. Okay, so you have certain temperatures that determine the sex of the individuals in egg clutch, right? And you have these turtles that come and nest on the beaches. They dig, the females come and go up a little higher in the land and they dig these cavities with their flippers and they lay a large hoard of eggs and then they cover this back with sand. And based on the temperature that is present, these hatchlings will be either males or females. So in this case, in this figure that is shown out here, you have males that are produced at lower and higher temperatures, but at intermediate temperatures, you have females, right? And out here in the oops, in the graph that is shown out here, you see males that are formed at a lower temperature, and the number of percentage of males goes on dropping as the temperature increases. So higher temperature means more females. And this pattern too is what is seen in the figure out here on the right? Oh, actually, it's the opposite of this. So you have males at intermediate temperatures and you have females that are seen at lower and higher temperatures, right? So this is known as temperature dependent sex
Got it,
determination.
ma'am.
Yeah, Ranul?
Yes, ma'am, I understood.
Okay, okay. Yeah. So the pattern type 1 is usually seen in turtles, such as the olive ridley sea turtles also that come and nest on the east coast of India. And pattern 2 is seen in like alligator species as well as some gecko species, right? Okay, so yeah, I think we're done a bit early today. I have one last question for you. So tell me, which of the following is not a greenhouse gas? This is all your basic.
Nitrogen, ma'am.
Okay, nitrogen. What anybody else has agrees or
Methane.
disagrees? Methane, okay, is not a greenhouse gas.
A.
Water vapor, okay. Okay, one option for water vapor, one option for nitrogen. Water, okay, there are just the two of you again. Yeah, so the right answer is actually nitrogen because water vapor is a greenhouse gas. It does contribute to global warming, right? And this is all probably you have studied like a long time ago. It's one of the Earth's most abundant greenhouse gases, right? And it is responsible for trapping the heat within the environment. Yeah, so I don't have any more additional questions for today as per se, but so I was actually looking for a graph for this. I could have probably just drawn it by hand. Do I have an annotating tool? Let me see if this works. So if you have any questions, please just let me know.
Not as of now, ma'am.
Okay, sure. Uh, okay, I don't think this is working. But have all of you have like the both of you heard of this term known as the phenological mismatch?
No, ma'am.
No? Okay, so there is basically this thing known as a phenological mismatch that occurs. And what happens? Oh, I can't use this. Okay, what actually happens is that so, so there are a lot of phenomena that are explained by climatic variables, and this is seen very easily in terms of vegetation cycles that happen, and in terms of nesting of birds. So, what happens is that birds are dependent on worms during the breeding season because they feed their fledglings with worms, right? And the presence of worms in an environment depends upon the availability of fresh green leaves, right? So you have the bursts of availability of different organisms based on the climatic variables that are present around them. Let me just try and okay, I just have one color, but let's see if this works. Okay, so I have time here, time. And then I have the tree or the leaves that uh, are abundant during this particular period. Let's say abundance here. I don't know how to write. Right. So you have leaves. Oh God, this is. You have leaves. Then with the onset of leaves, you have the worms. Right. The worm. And then you have the birds, right? The breeding season. This is the birds. So this is in a normal climatic condition, right? So everything is in sync. So when the leaves are increasing, the worms are also increasing because they feed on the leaves, and then the breeding cycle of the birds happens also around mid-year. That is coinciding with the availability of the worms, right? But what happens in the case of a climatic phenomenon, right? Everything gets pushed to a very later stage, especially like the flowering and the fruiting of plants, right? Plants are affected much before the other fauna is affected, right? So the leaves will start putting forth new leaves at a later stretch, right? In the year. If I see this is thing, instead of the leaf burst being during this period, it is during this period, right? And this coincides with the presence of the worms. But what is happening that during this period is that once the worms eat all the new leaves, then the worms, they are cycle to become maybe like butterflies or like moths gets accelerated, and by the time the birds are coming in there are no worms, right? And then this gets pushed much later, much later, much later, to the point when these timings don't match. So it reaches a point where you have the bird's breeding cycle is still as normal. Imagine like this in time. Okay, wait. It's just getting more messy. Okay, I'll just draw it there. So you have your midpoint in time. Then you have your bird cycle that is still going on here. But then you have the leaves and the worms that have altered their cycle and pushed back, right? And then what happens? Then the birds remain hungry because there are, first of all, no leaves and no worms that are present. So all these birds go hungry, and that year the birds have a very low turnover. That means there will be very few of those bird species in the community. But in order to combat this, the birds will also push their breeding season to later when the worms are available, right? So these are all called phenological mismatches. Phenology is basically the tracking of any annual cycle of an organism, right? Are you familiar with the term phenology? Yes, no, right? It's a cyclic. Okay, so phenology is basically a cyclical and seasonal natural phenomenon that occurs, right? And this is very much driven on climate uh, and environmental variables. So all our like let's just consider birds again. So birds usually breed just before the monsoon season because it is due. So by the time it is a monsoon season, their chicks will hatch and there will be a large availability of insects. And insects is what these parent birds feed their chicks with, right? So it has to coincide with the timing because, as you know, when the monsoon comes in, the insect abundances increase in the environment, right? So these are all phenological cycles. Let me write it down. Phenology. Phenology, right? So climate change causes a mismatch in these phenological cycles, and that in turn hampers a lot of life cycles of various different organisms, right? So, yeah, this was just an extra bit of information on how climate can affect organisms. All right, so I think we are done with officially class today. So, if you have any questions, happy to wait. If not, then we can, yeah, meet next week. Next later. Gate ecology. Okay, so gate ecology is a very specific exam that covers the syllabus of only ecology and evolution. Let me see if I can get the syllabus. So you have various topics. Okay, you can't see the screen. Let me just share that page. Oops, where is this gate? Yeah. Okay, so this is the gate syllabus. I don't know if it has appeared. And you have two broad categories of ecology and evolution. And you have fundamental concepts. You have population ecology, interactions, community ecology, ecosystem structure and function. And if you read all these subcomponents, they are literally everything that has been covered here. And in evolution, also, you have several different components that have been covered in this lecture series as well. And then you have a little bit of quantitative ecology that includes a lot of statistical techniques and methods that are very important in ecological sciences. So research institutes for gate ecology. So there are a lot of institutes in India that do accept gate ecology, and they are basically institutes that have ecology departments. So the Indian Institute of Science, that is IISc in Bangalore, accepts Gate Ecology for their PhD program in ecological sciences. And you also have a lot of ICERs all over India, that is Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, and several of them also have ecology departments that accept GATE scores for admission criteria. So I would, for anybody who is giving the exam and who has enrolled for it, I would say please go through the past question papers, because they will give you a good idea of what are the questions that come for the exams, and then you will have an idea of uh, which topics to focus on, and like or address queries from those topics if you aren't familiar. There are a few centers only. Actually, I'm not aware of the centers. So I know in centers that are, I didn't know that. Um, I think all centers do give gate, but the number of people attending it might be lesser. But I don't know if they, because there are a lot of gate centers, since there are different branches of GATE, and usually you are sitting in a center where people are giving multiple different exams. So everybody is not giving ecology, they're giving mathematics or life sciences or some different subject. So I'm not sure if. So for GATE ecology, you can, I mean, is it, if it's pertaining to GATE in particular, you can Excel. I don't know what is Excel. Is that life sciences? Okay, so life sciences, since it's a very broad topic, it is acceptable to a lot more institutes uh, than gate ecology, because gate ecology is very specific. So if you want to join an ecology lab in an institute, I would highly recommend you to give gate ecology. But if you are still not sure and you want to dabble in like microbiology or any other field of biology, then probably gate ecology will give you a much uh, higher likelihood of getting into the biological sciences program than just a gate ecology score. Because it is only like the ecology departments that would accept the ecology score. So if you get into an institute with an gate ecology score, it means that you're going to join an ecology lab. But if you are still undecided, then probably life sciences is a better option to go for. Yeah. Cool. All right. If no other questions, then let's meet next week. Okay. All right, then. Bye, everyone.